Hey guys, it's Jenna. In today's video, we're going to be going over the new Makeup by Mario eyeshadow palette. This is called the Ethereal Eyes palette, and this, I believe, is his very first multi-finish palette. So I'm super excited to go over everything. I do have a little bit of a hint about how this video is going to go. This has got to be one of my favorite palettes from the releases of this year. So this is going to be a very exciting video to do, and I think you guys will really love this one as well. So let's get right on into it. So first off, let's talk about the pricing, which is one of the biggest changes, I would say, coming in from his first palette launches going into this one. So the outer casing that the palette rests in is very similar to the other palettes, but you'll actually be able to see the first change, which is the shape of the palette itself. So this is very much more square versus his other palettes were a lot more rectangular. I also feel like this palette has a lot more of a luxurious casing to it. It's a little bit heavier. This one feels a little bit on the plasticky side, a little bit more lightweight and not as luxurious. So this one has like some beefiness to it, you know, like it's definitely got some weight behind it. And then you have on the back of it, you have kind of like how he's been doing all of his palettes. So each shade is marked Ethereal Eyes 1, Ethereal Eyes 2, so there isn't actually shade names. The Master Mattes palette is also similar, where it goes Matte 1, Matte 2, Matte 3. There's 12 grams of product in the Master Mattes palette, and this one also is 12 grams. So the amount of product in them is the same, but the prices vary a lot. And I do think it has to do with packaging as well as multi-finish, but I also think it's a little bit of an upsell as well. Just pulling up the Sephora app here, the Master Mattes palette, this was one of his original releases. This one is 48 US dollars. In Canadian conversion, that is 64 Canadian dollars. This new palette is 68 American dollars or 85 Canadian dollars. So we're talking about a significant jump. We're not talking about a few dollars here. So that to me, although I do enjoy this palette, another kind of teaser in this video, I do think that that significance of a jump, I kind of wish I would know more of the reason why or why he would rationalize that, except for multi-finish and new packaging. Obviously, packaging makes a big difference in manufacturing and how it feels and obviously cost, but that's a lot more of an increase. Luckily, you are able to purchase this palette during the VIB sale still because it just launched yesterday. So if you are Rouge VIB, you will be able to save a percentage of money off of it, which does help. But that jump is a little bit too significant in my opinion. It's probably one of the only cons of this palette. Another thing to consider is that because there are different finishes in this palette, they all weigh the same amount, but sometimes depending on the finish, you might end up getting a little bit more in certain finishes than the mattes, for instance. So this is the inside of the palette, by the way. So beautiful. A lot of you guys are saying this is like a basic palette. You know what? That is fine. Like, I do not mind a basic palette that is beautiful like this from day to night. This is such a stunning palette. So I am a big fan of the everyday boring palettes, if you will. These are also going to be major sellers when it comes to retail market of makeup consumer, right? Not every makeup consumer wants to have bold color all the time. A lot of these colors are going to be very wearable, everyday friendly, and so the brands that do this, like Tarte for instance, they really are reaching a wide audience versus just the ones that are like into bold, artistic, you know, editorial looks for instance. So this is the beautiful palette. I will go through all the finishes as well, but just kind of talking to my point about this, even though each one is 1 gram, we have to keep in mind there's multi-finish in here. So there's mattes in here, and there's also what he calls a glitter shimmer, which is his newest formula. You will get the same amount of weight in every pan, but some of that might be, maybe the formula is a little thinner, and so you have a little bit more of it versus the mattes, which might feel heavier and you get less of it, right? So that's just also something to consider. Let's talk about this palette though. We do have this beautiful silver metallic base that's on it, and going from left to right, the first shade is called Ethereal Eyes 1. It is a matte, and Mario calls his mattes suede mattes. We're gonna get to that in a second. The next one is his glitter shimmer, which is so stunning, Ethereal Eyes 2. Then we have two more mattes in that top row. We have another matte in the middle row starting from the left. We have another glitter metallic shimmer, and then we have another matte beside that, as well as a shimmer shade at the very end of the row. A matte on the bottom row as well. We do have two shimmer metallics, those beautiful glitters that he's describing in this palette, and we also have another matte at the end. The matte at the end has an embossment. It says Makeup by Mario on the end of it, and it is very lightly pressed. So I've been working with this, I've been swatching it a few times, doing comparisons and things like that, and already it's not as apparent as it was when I had the palette first opened. So just so you guys know, that is not a hard pressed embossment. It is not going to impact how you pick up the powder and make the distribution of powder uneven on your brush or anything. It's just a lightly pressed embossment, which I like. Now, according to Sephora, this is Mario's dream palette with 12 new signature shades. There are no duplications, apparently, from the Master Mattes palette or the metallics or that other palette that he did. I forget what it was called. Not my favorite one, actually. Let me pull it up for you. So the Master Metallics was very like candy looking, I feel like. It did have some nice finishes in it, but the Master Mattes is still probably my favorite palette out of his past launches. We have the Master Metals palette, which I was like, oh, it's just okay. It's one that you did have to use his Master Metal Manipulator, which made it a little bit more of that creaminess. So for me, I found it kind of messy. It was one that had a tray in it, and then you could mix the pigments right in there, and I was kind of like, you know, maybe it's me being a little bit of a lazy makeup user, but that's not really an extra step I want to do. So I found those palettes just okay. The Master Mattes is my favorite out of the three, and the Suede Matte formulation is a little bit on the powdery side. It's a lot closer to a Tarte matte, in my opinion, versus a Natasha matte, which is considered a creamy matte. If you guys are familiar with Natasha Denona and her formula, she has a lot of creaminess to her formulations, and the powdery matte side of things is still really beautiful, very user-friendly, but I think because they lack a little bit of creaminess, they tend to spread very quickly along the eye because they don't have that weight of the creamy formulation, versus a powder matte is very lightweight and can just whew, like blend and go crazy on your lid. So I would just lightly dip your brush in this pan and then apply to the lid very softly. We're not talking about heavy, you know, pushing of this pigment or having to press it in. This is definitely lightweight. You're going to see kick up in the pan. We'll talk about the look I created today, but you're going to see kick up in the pan. You're going to feel that powderiness of this finish as well. High pigmentation, very lightweight formula. Make sure that you are blending that very, very well. I'm going to quickly go over the comparisons from the mattes palette, which is this guy, that I don't reach for a ton. It feels a teeny bit stiffer than what I would like. I feel like the Master Matte formulation is a little bit more stiff and firmer than this one. In my experience, the Master Mattes is a little bit on the stiffer side. I do find I have to blend that one significantly more. This one tended to be a little bit more user-friendly to me, which I liked. The Ethereal Eyes is on the left of each pair, and then we have the Master Mattes on the other side. These are nowhere near similar, except for the last pair at the very end. I would say that one is the most similar. But if you're kind of worried about any duplications of his mattes from the Ethereal Eyes to this Master Mattes, this one is, in my opinion, very standalone. And if you do own that one already, you will see that this one has a little bit more of like a purplish hue to it. He does call this neutral. I think it's like neutral cool for the shades that I would, I mean, I'm not a makeup genius like him, so they're neutral. But to me, they're a little bit on the cooler side as well for the shades. And these, even these deep browns, have a teeny bit of a purple quality to them to make them different than the mattes in the Master Mattes by Mario. Now, going over my look today, let's talk about the first pigment I used, which was the matte in Ethereal Eyes 1. This is in the top left corner right here, and I went all over the lid with this one with the Sonia G brush. This one is really easy to layer, but the kick up is evident in the pan, like I mentioned earlier in this video. This one I did find I had to layer about 2 to 3 times to get the opacity I wanted. That is similar to the mattes experience I've had with previous palettes. The fallout is minimal, which I like. Considering this one can fly really easily, like I said, it's a lightweight formula. This one does not have significant fallout, which I appreciated. I did go in with the next shade. This one's called Ethereal Eyes 5, which is this beautiful gray purple over here, and I also layered that one about 3 times on my lid. I used a Smith brush with this one. This is also a natural haired brush. Went in a few times to layer and pack this on the lid, but this was a really beautiful, beautiful shade to start building up this look. I really wanted it to be more on the cool side. I wanted this to be kind of like everyday glam, nothing too dark for my first tutorial of this palette, and so far so good. Again, no pigment to worry about along the face with fallout. Definitely built really well, blended really well, but once again, my biggest tip is to make sure you are not layering this pigment too heavily because it does blend out very easily, so you're good. But if you have quite a bit of pigment on your lid and you start to blend, you'll find it really travels. It's one of those ones that can just carry, and you'll start having like pigment everywhere. So just be careful where you're placing and be very light-handed. Really wanted to get in with that glitter formulation he's talking about. You know me, I love shimmer, I love glitter, it's my thing. I need to have it in every look. And it's interesting, I did watch a tutorial of him using the glitters. There's a couple ways he did this. He did it placing it with a fingertip. The other way, he used his master set, like correct or whatever, and I don't have that in my collection. It's called the Master Eye Prep and Set, and this one is supposed to be like a primer for eyeshadow. I did actually try to use it with the Pat McGrath Artistry wand, that little like intensifier for her Blitz Astrals, so we'll get into that later. But first, I went in with a fingertip. This is stunning. This formulation he claims to be the first in the world, and the thoughts I have with that, it's like Mario's version of a Natasha Denona Chroma Crystal or a Pat McGrath Blitz Astral. Both of these have similar qualities. They feel different because they're different like formulations, but this one has quite a bit of shimmer to it. So it's really that gorgeous glide, that beautiful gel-like shimmer on your lid, that classic veil. And this looks absolutely beautiful on the lid, you can see. So there are 4 of these in this palette, which I love. If you're going to commit to a formula like this, you got to do it well. And out of the 12 shades, there are 4, which I love. So this shade that I picked up is Ethereal Eyes 6. So beautiful. It's right here. It's stunning. And like I said, it gives me very much those characteristics of the Blitz Astrals or the Natasha Denona Chroma Crystal that has that really nice gel-like consistency. It also reminds me a bit of the pop shades from Charlotte Tilbury. Really love that. I mean, a stamp of approval from this formulation for sure. When I saw Mario play with it, I was like, I hope this is what I think it is. And it's absolutely beautiful. The depth I used is a shimmer on this part of the palette here. This is E8, right? E8, right here. There we go. This I used a very detailed brush for. This one also built up really nicely, but I will say it does have quite a bit of pigmentation to it with that lightweight feel, just like the mattes. So when you place it, make sure you're careful because like I said, you blend and it will travel. It will go. It's so lightweight, it will do the distance. So this is a lovely one as well. And I was very careful. I went just in that outer corner there, and I did find it did a great job as well. I also took that purpley matte, the E or EE, it's EE on the back of this palette, Ethereal Eyes 5 right here. I took that shade kind of in the lower lash as well. So now we have our look developing. So here is the Artistry wand I'm talking about from Pat McGrath. It's called the IntensifEyes Artistry wand, and you actually click it upward and you will see it's like a pen type format, and you can like put it wherever you want to really intensify her glitters and her shimmers. And I was curious because Mario does use his Master Eye Prep. I don't have that to give that oomph behind the glitters. So I thought this would be a similar product to try it with. And it actually does work really well. I'm going to show you before and after how the impact is, but not only does it impact the lid a little bit more for you, it also seems to adhere that glitter really nicely on the eye. So although the fallout is minimal, you're going to get a little bit more longevity from your glitter as you wear this look because it's really adhered to that lid. If you have something similar, I guess a glitter glue could work, but they're very messy. So I really like this wand. It's just clean. I don't have to like take a glue and worry I'm gonna, glue my lashes together or something. This is just really easy to use. So I love this if you want to intensify, but you can just use your fingertip as well and get a medium opacity shine. That's so beautiful. This palette sort of reminds me a little bit of Natasha Denona's Glam palette. It's not a duplicate because this one is definitely more like browns, silvers, a little bit of those pink shimmer, but it doesn't really have the same colors like the Mario one does. But it's sort of like Mario's version of a glamorous palette like this. So that's kind of what I feel like if you love Natasha Denona's Glam palette, I think you're gonna really love this because it's got like glamorous vibes with those beautiful glitters and the metallics and stuff, and those mattes, they just feel like they're a little bit more improved in my opinion. I can't say enough good things about this one. I do think that it's worth the stupid price hike. I do. I hate that it does. It's just so good. It's better than the other three he's made. I 100% would say that. My little babe is here. We are ready to say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this review was helpful. I just love you. You're the best. Until my next one, guys, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.